Last time we talked about some of my favorite combat innovations in gaming. Today we're taking a turn for the worst. But it wouldn't be any fun kicking trash while it's in the dumpster, so rather than focus on fundamentally broken combat, I want to focus on specific design choices that hampered otherwise great games. Put on your nitpick cap and get ready to get petty. The gloves are already off. I'm coming for the darling of yesteryear, Elden Ring. I've spoken at length on boss balance and the lack thereof in spirit summons already, so today's my opportunity to gripe about ambiguous information. Why, when Sekiro provided the postural blueprint, does Elden Ring lack a Poise Meter? Encouraging poise breaks through new features like jump attacks and guard counters is a great addition to combat. What's baffling is keeping your progress vague. FromSoft combat is all about timing, understanding animation duration for attacks, metering them with evasion in between enemy offensives, and mixing the two to impose your will. The apex of pressing your advantage is a stagger, giving you a massive opening to unleash offense or riposte. Planning for this opening is helpful for resource management, timing moves with long animations, or simply knowing when to play riskier for a large payoff. That's impossible without a meter to assess the incoming stun. Sure, if you're used to fighting an enemy or boss many times, you could keep a mental tally, but when optimizing strategies, I noticed that they seem to regain substantial poise back if they hit you even a single time, no matter how frequently they got slammed around beforehand or afterward. I have no way of knowing if I was just going insane from repetitive practice, or there's substance to that idea. From the basic level to the flashiest plays in Elden Ring, understanding all angles of combat is key. Not including an integral innovation from a previous title is a head-scratcher. Similarly puzzling is trivializing difficulty via a treasure trove of healing. Breath of the Wild's buffet of sustain takes the stakes out of otherwise thrilling combat. I love watching ingredients dance to a happy tune as much as the next Link, but giving you free access to every Tom, Dick, and sandwich means preparation trumps all danger. That is, with the exclusion of the developer's only answer to this edible arms race, making absurdly strong endgame enemy variants that can one-shot you. So either everything is trivial while you chow down to the point of literally tipping the scales, or your preparation means nothing in the face of overpowered damage. They should have implemented a battle pouch, allow players to slot in a limited amount of items to access during combat, otherwise disabling the food menu. This would still encourage preparation, but add a layer of strategy to what items you bring to the table, increasing tension as healing dwindles. This is not a revolutionary concept. Breath of the Wild borrowed many tropes to create its breathtaking world. I wish they would have relied on tried and true healing practices to heighten the battles within. Number 8, Evolve, poor balance. My salt mines at Evolve fumbling its potential could create a fifth ocean. The game well earned its pre-release hate train by marketing extensive DLC down our throats before it even hit shelves. It's a shame because the game underneath a pile of greed had an incredible concept. The core gameplay loot pit 4-player hunters against a single-player monster. The monster evaded the hunters to feast on wildlife and evolve, while hunters tracked and aimed to trap it, forcing battle before it gains too much power. Each battle had a lasting impact on the match. Any HP damage the monster takes is permanent, while downing hunters decreases their maximum HP, making it easier to KO them next time. This created a battle of attrition, giving hunters an early advantage, while monsters thrived on evading capture, evolving, then initiating surprise attacks. This concept sounded amazing, and it was when player skill aligned. It rarely did. At the entry level, monsters saw high win rates. Hunters lacked coordination, strong understanding of their tools, and lacked map knowledge. Meanwhile, even beginner monsters could easily understand chomping on wildlife and spamming abilities newbies are ill-prepared to handle. That's if they could even trap the monster. Poor play would often let monsters run rampant for a dozen odd minutes without a single combat engagement. Then once you finally meet, it's a fully evolved beast melting your inexperience in seconds. When monsters weren't crushing your spirit with an endless hunt, you'd get matches with a monster so good they'd ambush you at the landing zone for a swift defeat. A handful of losses like this in a row, and it's no wonder why 80% of the players left the match dissatisfied. This left a small core of dedicated players pushing the game's skill ceiling, at which point the tables flipped dramatically. Coordinated teams of hunters fully utilizing their kit held a massive advantage over even the most experienced monsters, alienating high-end monster players. So at the bottom end, one player feeds on 4, their fun causing the majority of those players to lose interest. Once the fresh player pool ran dry, their time invested led to a domination by high-end hunters, leading those monster players to quit with their egos shattered. With no high-end monsters or low-end hunters, the best hunters around were left slaying new monsters, and that drove the final nail into the coffin. This is a problem that many games face, a lack of balance. The key to engaging combat is making victory euphoric and losses feel fair, fun, and hard-fought. The very rare even match of Evolve was one of the greatest multiplayer experiences I've personally had. Multiple battles of attrition in the Thunderdome, interspersed between high-speed chases, leading to a final showdown at the apex of its evolution. Sadly, that describes the vast minority of matches. Winning in almost any case came at the cost of someone else's futile efforts. Evolve's maligned monetization got it off on the wrong foot, but its poor balance ruining entertainment value was its real death knell. Leaning towards solely undertuned balance, let's set our sights on the pushovers of Pokemon. Every single AI opponent you face can be defeated by slamming your face into your Joy-Cons. At least in Silver, Whitney's Miltank rolled out all over my soul, and Diamond's champion Cynthia stepped on all of us with a thunderous quake. How about the most recent champion, Massive Hair Helmet, and her ace, Failure? Glimmora has a special skill. Anytime it's hit with a physical move, it drops toxic spikes on your side of the field. The more layers, the more devastating the poison inflicted. The trick is they only afflict Pokemon as they swap in. Naturally, this is a valuable asset as a lead, creating a battle of attrition weighted against your favor from the very first clash. Except, this is her final Pokemon. Can't hold back my ass! This is merely one example. I could point to Scarlet and Violet's Terra gimmick, one that adds substantial layers to combat, allowing one Pokemon per battle to outright change its typing, increasing the damage of Terra-type moves, giving it access to the Terra Blast for unexpected coverage, and nullifying expected weaknesses. It's a significant tide turner. How does any AI that can Terra in the game use it? Exactly according to their monotype gym. You completely lose the element of surprise, a significant advantage of Terra when it's predictable. If you're already sweeping a grass gym with a fire Pokemon, don't throw out a rock Pokemon, then Terra it into grass. Your Terra type is clearly idiot. Pokemon's combat is full of setup moves, status moves, and multi-turn plans, leading to a satisfying payoff. There's little satisfaction about throwing in a Pokemon with an obvious type swing and one-hit KOing the game's supposed challenges into oblivion. I'm screaming into the void because my clearly decrepit bones aren't the target whippersnappers the Game Freak is going for. It's a tried and true formula. I get that. Ultimately, players online will give you the depth that you might be looking for. It's just a shame Pokemon's solo journey can't offer more than a plethora of pushovers. Shifting gears to overtuned monsters, Mario Party's competitive minigames featured some horrible balance in the early days. Nothing is more notorious than battling it out against the AI in a good old game of Tug of War. The proficiency of the AI solo player against your threesome is absurd. To win, you have to spin the control stick faster than your opponent. Let me remind you that the N64 control stick was stiff with circular ridges along its face. You may as well put a blender blade on the joystick. Rapid spins create friction that, given enough time, eroded the skin off your palm. Yes, kids around the world playing a Nintendo virtual board game were burning holes in their hands and still losing the damn minigame. I myself bore the whirligig wound to shame and had nothing but L's to show for it. There were pro strats such as setting your controller on a table, using a glove, and shifting your body weight to torque at a specific angle for maximum rotation. All for 10 coins. If you think I'm exaggerating, the recent re-release in Mario Party Superstars includes an injury warning. Few games overtune their classes to the point of real injury, so hats off to you, Mario. Number 5, Bloodborne, counter damage. No matter how much I worship the Church of Yharnam, I never feel that Bloodborne's counter damage is a reasonable mechanic. In a game where quick evasion is emphasized and execution windows are tight, punishing players who mistime slightly with double damage is a swift kick to where the blood moon don't shine. What I mean is that if you dodge poorly, go through the animation, then get hit at the end, you take half the damage as a person who dodges slightly off, loses 1/10 of a second on invincibility frames, then gets chunked. This becomes more dramatic in the DLC when enemies and bosses start hitting for nearly half my bloated vigor, making counter hits practically one-shots. It's so deflating anytime I'm having an epic battle with my beloved Ludwig only for him to horse torpedo me into an instant death. Nitpicking a bit, you bet. Get good? I really should. But it's my list, and if I could remove counter damage, I'd do it in a bloody heartbeat. Giving credit where it's due, at least Bloodborne doesn't alter your iframes. Keeping the timing consistent is vital due to the small error margin. No one would ever tie them to a stat, right? Enter Adaptability in the black sheep of the Souls saga Dark Souls 2. Look, there's a lot I love about the game. I know I pick on it a fair amount, but it really deserves this one. FromSoft often includes useless stats like resistance in the original Dark Souls. It's as if they heard that feedback and said, okay, here's a stat that pulls resources away from key things like health. endurance, and damage, because you're gonna need these iframes if you want any chance against the game's signature shitboxes. It does have other minorly useful effects like snorting life gems faster, but I still think it's baffling to tie an integral part of the combat equation to an otherwise worthless stat. In the late game, it's hardly an issue thanks to the bountiful souls you'll acquire, but early on where stat decisions are vital, it feels bad having to funnel souls into something that's a given in every other FromSoft foray. In other departures from successful fighting formulas, Devil May Cry 2 misunderstood the stylish success of its predecessor in favor of becoming a third-person rail shooter. Ebony and Ivory were alternative ranged options to help gap-fill combos, keep the style meter from falling, and hit the enemy during short-ranged windows. Devil May Cry 2's handguns went nuclear, making you feel foolish for not pumping every enemy full of lead. Yes, you can still use combos and try to master melee combat, but thanks to your ridiculous firepower, enemy design often revolves around foes out of your reach, like the infamously awful Infected Chopper. Thankfully, this entry is the only exception to DMC's star-studded time in the combat spotlight, but it's a blemish on that reputation that will never be forgotten. Speaking of series that didn't understand its success, Gears of War 2 dropped the ball so hard it's living in another millennium. In my teenage years, the OG Gears of War was a way of life. I had a dozen online buddies during the heyday before party chat who would log in, hop in a lobby, and play for hours on a nightly basis. I would not be surprised if I surpassed 5,000 hours in it. I played that game a ton. So I'm coming from a very informed place when I say this. Despite Epic's intent to create a cover-based tactical shooter, their Nasher shotgun was the belle of the ball. Cover was used instead for wall bouncing, quickly zooming in and out of cover, taking the advantage of the game's snappiness to evade slow aiming foes and blast them into meaty shreds. Smart usage of cover to close the gap between your opponents and pummel them in a bull rush of bullets was glorious. This was the de facto way to fight in the game. 1v1 bouts to end matches even had customs to empty their magazine and melee the air to start an honorable duel. Sure, power weapons helped turn the tide, and lancers were extremely powerful when coordinated in a group from multiple angles, but the king of mid to close range was the Nasher. A small contingent didn't like this, including good old Cliffy B. This led to the sequel's innovative stopping power. Now, when someone moving towards you was shot, there was a substantial slow, pushing you to a crawl while soaking up damage. This instantly made the shotgun non-viable at any other range than face-to-face, and even then, it was feasible to lose to someone spraying the Lancer without aiming at you. Ignoring what a significant portion of their player base loved felt like a slap in the face. I went from a diehard fan with a disgusting amount of playtime to immediately dropping the sequel. Future entries did revert stopping power significantly, but it was never the same. I'll always look back on my time in Gears 1 fondly. Sadly, Epic didn't feel the same. While our best combat designs featured swordplay at its finest in Sekiro, today our #1 spot is taken by the polar opposite.
It just works.
Skyrim's melee mediocrity. How can one of the best-selling, most celebrated games of all time flounder so much anytime you draw your weapon? Choosing to brandish the blade feels more like you're suffering a concussion while trying to fight off bees with a 2x4. The feedback when you hit enemies is so stiff. You hear a loud thunk, see the HP bar drop, but it feels like nothing actually happened. Combos are non-existent, moves barely differ between the various arms, and without any way to evade, you're waddling through a battle of attrition and quicksand against the least compelling enemies I can remember in any game considered a masterpiece. And hey, I love Skyrim too. The Elder Scrolls was a series that introduced me to the explorative wonder open world games can offer. I love the silly quests, lunking for loot, and the calming music. But combat was never its strong suit. Elden Ring's success shows you can have everything Skyrim does well and stellar combat. Here's hoping Starfield can show Bethesda is up to the task. For today, Skyrim gets my biggest badge of shame for lackluster combat. What are your biggest gripes in gaming battles? Let us know in the comments below. Check out the best combat designs if you haven't, and subscribe because I'm soaring like an eagle, smashing that upload button this month with coverage on Wulong and Resident Evil 4 Remake soon. I'll see you there.